All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Arts and Education Information Session. My name is Lizzie Morales. I am the Arts and Education Program Director at the Maryland State Arts Council. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Chad Buterbaugh, who is our Deputy Director, and he's going to be taking us through the introductory slides today. If you just joined us with the earlier coffee with the council, this may feel repetitive, but it is our custom to start public meetings off with the next few slides. So Chad, please go ahead and take us through those introductory grounding slides.
Thanks, Lizzie, and good morning, everyone. We're on Google Meet today, and you'll see the primary functions really for you will be the sound and video. Those are the microphone and camera icons toward the middle of your screen. You can toggle both of those on and off. Computer-generated closed captions are available. You also may raise your hand during the Q&A portion of this session to get your questions answered. Slide. And you may also enter your questions and comments into the chat using the little voice bubble icon. There are a number of other options for Meet. We probably won't be using most of those today, but if you're having any issues, you can put those in the chat and we'll try to get you taken care of. Onto our grounding slides. Again, these lead off all our public meetings, and the first of these is our Indigenous Land Acknowledgement Statement, which I will read in full. This statement is the sort of center component of a larger land acknowledgement project that we undertook a few years ago with tribal leaders from across the place now known as Maryland. We acknowledge that the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Akahannock Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, excuse me, Chopticot Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Natsuwewash Band of Indians, Piscataway Conoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them may be fully restored. You can learn more about our Land Acknowledgement Project at our website, msac.org, and via the chat. The Maryland State Arts Council's Equity and Justice Statements. The arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. MSAC and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination, regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and ability. Our vision is to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts, and our mission is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. In 2019, MSAC adopted a strategic plan that is still in force. This plan consists of 5 main goals, which I will read aloud. Goal 1, to increase participation. Goal 2, provide intentional support. Goal 3, build capacity. Goal 4, leverage connections. Goal 5, bolster Maryland arts. The entire strategic plan is listed on our site. Thanks, Lizzie, for posting that in the chat. Our creative meeting actions are intended to bring us together into productive dialogue while we're all in this space together. So while you are here, we will ask you to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, engage with everyone's presence as a gift, acknowledge that together we know a lot, enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry, share your idea and trust that it will be heard, use I statements, focus your language on the task at hand, hold one another accountable with care, apply yes and, or I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it, and finally, to balance your speaking and listening. What we're doing today is part of a full schedule of professional development offered by MSAC. These sessions can be virtual or in person. They consist of topic-specific sessions of interest to the arts sector, coffee with the council that we just had from 9 to 10 this morning, creative conversations, regional office hours, which are in-person events where we come to your area to hear questions and have conversations, and an annual statewide convening of the arts called the Maryland Arts Summit, in addition to the kinds of technical assistance sessions that we're doing at this moment. If you would like to propose a topic that you don't see on our schedule, you can do so either by emailing us or contacting anyone from our staff. You may also sign up for our communications at the link posted here. Thanks, Lizzie. So if you'd like to get involved with the Arts Council, one of the best ways to do so is to consider working as either a panelist or an editor. Panelists help us evaluate grant applications throughout the year, and editors work a little less frequently, but they come in to help us take a hard look at a program and propose how its policies might change. So we track our panelists and editors calls on this section of our site. You can currently see that there's actually grants for organizations call for editors. So if you are interested in getting involved, you may apply to do so. Applications take place in Smart Simple, our online grants management platform, and those selected to serve as panelists or editors receive training and support from relevant staff and are compensated for the work that they do. So with that, I turn it over to Lizzie to take us into our main content this morning. Take it away, Lizzie.
Great. Thank you, Chad, for getting us started. And good morning, everyone who is joining us this morning. Once again, if you have just joined us, my name is Lizzie Morales, and I'm the Arts and Education Program Director. And this is the Arts and Education information session for our fiscal year 2025. And on the screen, you see our agenda for today. So we just reviewed our grounding slides. And next, I'm going to go into an overview of the Arts and Education program. I'm going to really briefly talk about Poetry Out Loud, then go into the teaching artist roster, and wrap up today's session with going through our Arts and Education grant. And then any remaining time will be open for questions. I am going to hold off on answering questions until the end. Sometimes questions end up getting answered as I move through the presentation. And during that time, I'll ask you can either put your questions in the chat box or raise your hand. There is a lot of information that I'll be sharing with you all today. This meeting is being recorded, and anyone who is registered for the information sessions will receive a copy of today's slides. These will also be posted on our website for future reference. So the Maryland State Arts Council Arts and Education Program includes the Arts and Education Grant, which provides funds to teaching artists to lead arts learning activities in Maryland schools and community settings. Our teaching artist roster, which is a directory of Maryland-based teaching artists who lead a variety of arts education programs in those school and community settings. And the teaching artists who are on our roster have all been through a panel review or some type of vetting process. And then we have Poetry Out Loud, which is a national poetry competition for high schoolers. So again, today, most of today's presentation will focus on the Teaching Artist Roster application and the Arts and Education Grant, but I did want to briefly share information on Poetry Out Loud. This is a high school student poetry competition for students in grades 9 through 12. It's a national program, and it's co-presented with the National Endowment for the Arts and Poetry Foundation, and then it's implemented at the state level by state arts agencies in all U.S. states and territories. And so at the Maryland State Arts Council, we host the regional competitions and the state competition. We also offer coaching support to students who make it to the regional and state competitions. And we do this in collaboration with Do More Baltimore, which is an organization that has a specific focus on youth poetry and social justice. We do have a public call for Poetry Out Loud judges, which will be open in October. So if you are interested in learning more about this program, ways to get involved, maybe you're interested in serving as a judge during our regional or state competitions, or even perhaps as a coach to our students, please feel free to reach out to me. And also be sure to sign up for our newsletter for announcements on when those applications and call for judges open, and also those deadlines of when you need to submit those applications by. The website for the Poetry Out Loud program will be updated in the upcoming weeks, so just stay tuned for more information. So I'm first going to discuss the Teaching Artist Roster. The purpose of the Teaching Artist Roster is to recognize Maryland teaching artists and their professional contribution to the arts education field that deepen lifelong learning. The teaching artists on this roster are artists and educators who lead arts learning activities for groups of students in school and community settings. And the benefits of joining the roster include you're joining a network of Maryland-based teaching artists. Resources. Part of what we do is provide resources, such as help connect you with the right funding opportunities, answering inquiries from schools and organizations looking for teaching artists by directing them to our directory, as well as resources for artists in general in the form of professional development sessions, regional office hours where we go out into different regions in Maryland and meet with constituents. Another thing is that we have a Maryland State Arts Council Arts Directory, which is actually open to all artists and organizations, arts organizations in Maryland to register for. However, profiles on the Maryland State Arts Directory, those profiles who are on the teaching artist roster get highlighted on our arts directory with a specific arts and education teaching artist filter that helps schools and organizations search for teaching artists on our roster that have access to the Arts and Education Grant, or that can just help provide them services of what they're looking for. There's also you're eligible, if you join the roster, you're eligible to apply for funding through the Arts and Education Grant. There's no funding awarded by just joining the roster, but artists on the roster are eligible to apply for the funding through the Arts and Education Grant, which is a separate application process and review, which we're also going to discuss later on. And also new this year is we held our inaugural Teaching Artist Showcase. It was so great to see and hear about the really amazing work that teaching artists bring to our communities. And I see some of you who participated in that or joined us for that on this call. So it's nice to see you again. Really, it was really great to just hear about the connections teaching artists made with other organizations and schools, as well as each other. And our intention is to make this an annual event. So to be eligible for the Teaching Artist Roster, you must be a Maryland resident. You must be 18 years of age or older. You cannot be enrolled in a degree program, such as high school, undergrad, or graduate degree programs. Ensembles and collective groups, as long as 50% of the artists in that ensemble and collective group live in Maryland, that is eligible. And for organizations who would like to join the roster, they must be nonprofit organizations, and a separate application for each artist who is part of that organization is required. And if there's any organizations that are interested in joining our roster, I recommend reaching out to me prior to applying so I can help guide you through that process. And here is our timeline for this upcoming year on the application process for the Teaching Artist roster. The application is currently open and will remain open for submissions until April 2025. There are 3 deadlines during the year, so that's when we review the submitted applications. Again, you can submit at any times, but there's only times in the year that we're actually going to be really looking, actively looking through those applications. So all applications that we receive between now and September 5th will be batched together and will be reviewed by a panel in the months of September and October. And we typically have about 5 panelists that review the application and that are chosen through our public panelist calls. Applicants are notified by early November whether their application has been approved or not. And this schedule pretty much repeats for the December 5th deadline and the April 5th deadline. So now I'm going to start walking through the Teaching Artist roster application. This is a general overview of the information that is needed to complete this application. So applicants need to provide information on their training and experience. Applicants need to include examples of their arts education programs and activities. There are a few short answer questions. And then lastly, a recording of arts education instruction, performance, or online programs, depending on the nature of the activity types that you're selecting in the application. So the application, so when you open the Teaching Artist roster application, you first fill in your contact information. And then the application will ask you to select your primary artistic disciplines and select the audiences that you currently serve through your work as a teaching artist. And the answer choices are check boxes, so you can select as many boxes that currently apply. And the first prompt that follows these selections and is scored by the panel is upload documents that demonstrate your background and experience in both A, your arts disciplines, and B, the audiences that you select with. And you may upload a maximum of 3 documents. And we actually have an application walkthrough session in a few weeks if you're interested in learning more. But for the maximum of 3 documents, this is really a technical reason. You're welcome to combine files together to just make sure that you can give us the most thorough answer as possible. The next prompt, the applicant will be asked to select the activity types that they currently offer audiences. And this selection includes workshops, residencies, visiting performances, out-of-school time programs, online programs, and lecture demonstrations. For each activity that you selected above, upload a sample lesson plan and/or program that includes a description and a sequence of instruction or performance. For school programs, include connections to state standards and/or learning competencies. And I'll also just note, if you're not certain on how to define an activity type, or you're not sure what type of activity your work falls into, we do have a glossary of arts learning activity types that's available on the Teaching Artist website at msac.org. And again, if you, after this, you'll receive a follow-up email with these slides, and you'll be able to click on the links in them so you can go directly to those documents. So next are the short answer questions. These are, the last 2 questions were 10 points each. These ones are 5 points each. And we ask the applicant to complete a series of short answer questions that align with MSAC values. So the first short answer question is, what are your inspirations as a teaching artist? Include any of your social, cultural, historical, or other factors and experiences that inform your instruction and or performance. The next question is, describe how your content, instruction, and or performance demonstrates a commitment to one or both of the following topics: diversity and or equity and justice. And this is according to our MSAC definitions. And in our definitions, we actually define diversity and equity and justice together separately. And then the last question, or last short answer question, is describe how your work demonstrates a commitment to inclusion and accessibility according to MSAC's definitions, and how you adapt content, instruction, and or performance to support learners' needs. The MSAC definitions that are mentioned in this question are actually defined directly in the subheadings in the application. We also have an MSAC glossary on our website. And so our hope is that this guides both applicants and panelists in using the same shared definition of those words, since I know there's a lot of different definitions out there. And then the last part of the application includes a recording of instruction or performance. And this question will look different depending on what activity types you select earlier in the application. If you currently, for example, if you check workshops and residencies earlier in the application, then the question, if you currently offer workshops, residencies, out of school time programs, or lectures, include links to a recording of your arts education instruction. And then again, the same question will be repeated if you offer visiting performances and or online programs. So if you offer all of those things, you might have to, you will probably be answering this question 3 times with 3 different recordings, depending on the nature of your work and activity types that you do. So this recording can be with an actual audience or a mock audience or pretend audience. We realize that it can be challenging, especially if you work with students in classrooms, to get those recordings. And so we can definitely work with you on producing a recording or giving you advice on how to do that if you don't have access to the actual audience. Some recordings we've received might be a group of neighborhood kids coming together and you just doing your lesson like you were in a classroom with them. Other recordings we have seen are people doing it to a mock audience or pretend audience as well. So again, if you ever have struggles with producing that recording, please reach out. And also, we're putting together some documents and tips on putting together a recording that should be coming soon. So for each recording link submitted in the application, there will be prompts that ask the applicant to include a brief description that describes the audience and provides context for the part of the activity that the panelists are viewing. So that's just really helpful to add that additional context of what we're seeing. And there's also a prompt for the applicant to enter timestamps if there are specific parts of the recording that the applicant would like the panelists to focus on. So those are some other parts of the application to be aware of. And for those of you interested in applying for the Teaching Artist roster, we do have a couple of services and resources available, such as coming up in a few weeks, we have our How to Apply the Teaching Artist roster webinar. That's on Tuesday, August 13th from 4 to 5 p.m. We also provide feedback on draft applications. So if an applicant would like feedback on a draft application before they click that submit button, especially for the ones that are this upcoming deadline on September 5th, we do ask to receive the feedback request on draft applications by August 25th. This is really so we have enough time to review the application, put together feedback and comments, and then provide the applicant with enough time to incorporate that feedback and comments into their application before the submission date. So we try our best to handle any requests received at any time, but we really appreciate it when people can send us the feedback request in advance to really give us enough time to do a thorough review. We also have resources available on our website, including the full rubric that the panel uses to score and comment on applications. So I recommend looking at this when completing a teaching artist roster application or any application through MSAC. And we also have a resource called Instructional Standards for Teaching Artists, which explains what standards of learning are and how teaching artists can use these standards of instruction and of learning in their work. And coming soon, there will be a resource on tips for creating the recording of arts learning instruction and performance. Okay, so now we are going to go into the Arts and Education grant. I am just going to quickly put 2 links into the chat box. There you go. One link is for those the upcoming How to Apply event, and the other is for our roster. Oh, sorry. Actually, you know what? That first link for the office hours is not correct. That's for today. So at the end, I will go back and I will put the link in for the How to Apply webinar. All right. Let's go into the Arts and Education grant. So this grant supports teaching artists who lead arts learning activities in school and community settings for learners of all ages. To be eligible to participate or to apply for this grant, the artist must be on the teaching artist roster. And then the school or community site must be a nonprofit organization with a 501c3 status. Could be a unit of government that would include public schools, libraries, recreation centers, senior centers, anything that's considered a unit of government, or a college and university that's part of the University of Maryland system. Private schools are eligible as long as they have a nonprofit organization status. So maximum grant awards. An applicant can request a grant up to $6,000. A collaborating school or organization or site may participate in up to 2 grants per fiscal year. And then an independent artist or lead artist may receive grant awards up to 4% of the AIE grant budget. And a teaching artist organization may receive grant awards totaling up to 15% of the budget, while also observing the 4% maximum per lead artist outlined above. And I'm going to go into more detail about what this means on the next slides. And I'll also note that these grant award maximums were a result of a 2023 Arts and Education program revision process. Creating a grant award maximum on applicants was important to ensure that we were more equitably distributing our funding to different artists and organizations across the state. So lead artist is defined as the person who's responsible for leading the arts learning activity at the site or with the collaborating organization in school. And for teaching artists who apply for grant funding directly as an independent artist, it is assumed on the application that you are the lead artist. And like I mentioned on the last slide, lead artists can receive grant awards of up to 4% of the overall arts and education budget. And so for FY 2025, the maximum is $30,000. And then teaching artists organizations, which are organizations who contract or employ teaching artists on their behalf, on the behalf of the organization, they could receive grant awards totaling up to 15%, which this year that maximum amount is $100,012,500. And they also still need to observe that 4% maximum per lead artist above. So this is to ensure that grants to teaching artist organizations are going to different artists within the organization. Now, some artists may apply for grants independently and through an artist organization, and either is fine, but that 4% maximum per lead artist still applies. So an artist could reach their maximum amount through an organization who's applying on their behalf and or applying for grants on their own. And the FY 2025 Arts and Education budget is $750,000. Which is what the maximum grant amounts are based on. And for those of you on our MSAC roster, this is actually a revised budget due to budget constraints, separate from the administration's recently approved cuts. And this was voted on and approved by our council this past Friday in the afternoon, so it's fresh off the press, and an email on budget updates is forthcoming. But this is really a significant investment of public funding specifically for arts learning and the work that teaching artists do around the state. And I'll also note that we have approximately 130 artists, ensembles, and organizations on the roster. And the Arts and Education grants are competitive grants. So an artist or organization may be eligible to receive up to the amount listed on the screen, but it also depends on the availability of funds, the number of applications received each month, and the average panel score on the application. And a lot of those details of how that all works together I'll be talking through over the next few slides. So this is the list of allowable expenses that the Arts and Education grant can be used for. The most common expense that I see on applications tend to be teaching artist fees, transportation and mileage, and oftentimes art supplies for that particular project. But this grant can cover consultant fees and contractual services, which could potentially cover expenses such as a workshop assistant, grant writer fees, marking materials for workshops, etc. Some items that the funds of the Arts and Education grant cannot be used for include space rental, re-granting, capital improvements, refreshments and food. We can't fund that, unfortunately. And if there are ever any questions about whether an expense item that you're considering putting into the grant application is allowed or not allowed, please feel free to contact me. We rather handle that before you submit the application if you do have questions. And I'll also note that our Arts and Education grant guidelines that are posted on the website go into a lot of those small details of what are allowed and unallowable use of funds for this grant. So before you begin to apply for an Arts and Education grant, these are typically the steps that need to occur. So first, an artist and a school or organization agree to collaborate. And once you agree, you're going to start discussing the services, the audiences that you'll be serving, the budget, and the timeline of events. Next, we need to identify a coordinator or someone who is the point of contact at that collaborating school or organization. And we need all this information in order to begin the Arts and Education grant application. So next, the teaching artist or the teaching artist organization opens or begins the application, and they also will serve as the primary contact on the grant application. And this is because the teaching artist or the teaching artist organization is the recipient of the grant funds if the grant is approved. So it's very helpful if they can be the primary contact and they are the one responsible for the grant application. So next, we're going to dive a little deeper into the actual Arts and Education application. If you have applied or participated in an Arts and Education grant in FY 2023 or 2024, you'll notice that we reformatted the application. So the headings and some of the application questions have been changed or tweaked. And these changes were based on applicant and panelist feedback over the past 2 years. So what you see sort of highlighted are the headings that you will see on the application. So the headings include activity information, and this is where you kind of list out what the art forms that this project will be using, what are the arts learning activities, who is the MSAC roster artist that we'll be using. The next heading is the collaborating school and organization information, and that's where we put all that information regarding who you're collaborating with. The coordinator information goes here. This is where evidence of support from a collaborating school or organization will go, and I'll talk about that in a moment too. And then the activity narrative is where we start seeing the scored questions, which I'll also go into. And then there's financial information, attachments, and electronic signatures box. So this is just a screenshot of so you could kind of see those headings I was just talking about. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen, but when you receive these slides afterwards, you'll hopefully be able to see it a little bit better. And also, if you go ahead and just go directly into the application, you'll see this as well. So the first, one of the first prompts under the collaborating school and organization information heading is that there'll be instructions to upload a file demonstrating the collaborating school or organization support for the proposed arts learning activities. And so the prompt is to upload a file demonstrating the collaborating school or organization's support for the proposed arts learning activities. And the file should include the name and title of the representative from the school or organization, the artist's name, and it should be dated in the current fiscal year. And only really one file is needed to demonstrate this support. The application prompt is for eligibility purposes. And I look at this to make sure that all parties involved in the proposed project are aware that this grant is being submitted. And so this prompt is actually not scored by the panelists. It's really just used for eligibility. And I'll also just alert everyone that we have a resource available. We have a letter of intent template that is on our website. And this is an optional template that is available to use as a resource and can be helpful to school administrators with limited time, or anyone with limited time. A principal letter on the school's letterhead is also fine. Email correspondence can also work as long as the correspondence clearly shows that the representative from the school organization is on board with applying for the Arts and Education grant and includes that information listed on this slide. So now we'll go into some more of the application prompts. And these are the first scored questions on the application. They're 10 points each. The full application is out of 50 points. So the first 3 questions that are scored include: describe the proposed arts learning activities. 2, describe the objectives of the proposed arts learning activities. For in-school programs, include references to state standards or learning competencies. And the third question is: describe the intended audience and how the objectives will align with the audience's needs. Now, if you have applied for an arts and education grant in the past few years, you'll notice that this is a change to some of the application questions. Based on applicant and panelist feedback, we separated one big question into 3 specific questions. That was typically what everyone was trying to get at. So we tried to take the one big vague question and really break it down to more specific questions. The next scored question on the application is: what is the timeline of the proposed arts learning activities? Specify dates, even if they're tentative, and include evidence of individual and collaborative planning, implementation, and follow-up or reflection with key stakeholders. And key stakeholders may include teachers, principals, administrators, executive directors, students, or others involved in the proposed arts learning activities. And then the final scored question on the application is regarding financial information. So what is the budget for the arts learning activities? Include all expenses and any anticipated income. Provide context and itemized expenses by category and amount. And then there's a few remaining questions that it helps provide context and information. And those are, is the collaborating school or organization offering any financial or in-kind support? And you would either select yes or no. If you select yes, you would list out what support will be provided and the associated costs from the collaborating school or organization. And this is really helpful information for the panel because it adds context to the grant application and budget. If you didn't include art supplies in the budget because the school is providing it, that's where you can make sure that we're aware that art supplies is needed and is included somewhere. And then last, you just need to enter the total program budget and then the grant request amount. Now, numbers 7 and 8 may be different or may be the same. Sometimes I see applications where, for instance, if it's a school application, maybe the PTA is helping to support some of the costs of the teaching artist residency. So they'll be putting in some funding as well as you want to supplement some funding through this grant. And so that's where the total program budget might differ than the grant request amount. So then we go to the attachments tab in the application, and this is where the application will ask the applicant to upload their W-9 form. Now, either the applicant will be an independent artist, and they can upload their own personal W-9 form. But new this year, we're allowing payments to single member LLCs. So if you're an independent artist and you want to get paid through your single member LLC, you may now do that. This only applies to the arts and education program as we explore more about single member LLCs and our funding towards them. This also means a single member LLC is if you have no employees outside of yourself that's a part of your LLC. And again, this is new. We're really excited about this, and we'll see how it goes this year. And then, a nonprofit organization or a teaching artist organization would upload their W-9 if they're the ones who are applying on the grant on a teaching artist's behalf. And then we get towards the end of the application with the electronic signatures. So there'll be an applicant signature box. So this is where the signature of a teaching artist, or if an organization is applying for a grant on behalf of a lead artist, this is where they'll enter their primary contact signature here. And then there's a second box for electronic signatures for the teaching artist or lead artist. So if an organization is applying on behalf of an artist, this is where the lead artist would enter their signature. And this is required on the application. So if an organization needs to include a lead artist in this application, you can do that. We have the ability to make applications collaborative by linking people's Smart Simple accounts to certain applications. All you do is need to email me and and I will help give the lead artist access to the application. For independent artists, it's also presumed that the independent artist is the lead artist on the application. So this is just where they would need to sign here again. So this next slide is a policy change that is part of a larger strategy to uplift our commitment to serving all citizens throughout the state of Maryland, especially those in underrepresented counties. Applications received from underrepresented counties are awarded 1 additional point to the application's average score. Counties designated as underrepresented counties are determined by the number of applications received during the previous fiscal year. And our FY25 underrepresented counties include Allegheny, Caroline, Carroll, Dorchester, Queen Anne, Somerset, St. Mary's, Talbot, Washington, and Worcester. And this really is to provide a modest benefit to applications from counties that the program would like to reach and operationalizes MSAC's commitment to serving all citizens throughout the state of Maryland. So monthly, for the Arts and Education grant, we have monthly panel evaluations between August and November and January and March. Applicants will be notified of the grant status by the end of the month in which it was reviewed or early the following month. And these are the review deadlines for the 2024-25 year. Pretty much between August and November, the deadlines continue to be on the 5th of the month. So August 5th, September 5th, October 5th, November 5th. We do pause for reviews in December. And then we continue with our reviews with the January 5th, February 5th, and March 5th deadlines. And so if a grant is approved, payment is received approximately 6 to 8 weeks from the date of a fully executed grant agreement form. And there is a grant timeline graphic available at msac.org. If a grant is declined, if a grant is approved, payments received 6 to 8 weeks. If a grant is declined, applicant may request feedback and reapply. So there is a link to a feedback request form that's in that grant notification email that applicants all receive following a grant submission. And then technical support and application assistance. So we do have resources available on our website that includes our grant guideline, which has been reformatted with the specific content at the beginning of the guidelines. So check that out. Also posted on our website are under resources is the Arts and Education grant full rubric. And then I also recommend looking at this, similar to the teaching artist roster, when you're working on your application responses. Look at the full rubric, because that's what the panelists are looking at when they're doing their reviews of an application. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, we have that letter of intent template. We also, again, have that application feedback process. So if you'd like us to review a draft application, that's fine. Again, the more time you can give us in advance, the better, so we can make sure we have time to look at it, review it, and give you comments. And then we also provide feedback on any declined applications. That comes in the terms of the panelist feedback. So we put together a feedback form, which is compiled comments of the panelists, and send that to you to help strengthen your application if you wish to reapply. And then lastly, there's a final report. So if you are awarded an arts and education grant, an online final report is typically submitted by August 15th, 2025, if you apply for this year and you get approved. There is some flexibility on that final report. For instance, if you're doing summer programming and the final report or the final session of your program concludes around the 15th of August or a little bit after, we can adjust that timeline accordingly. But for the most part, most of our grants need to submit their final reports by August 15th. All right. So now we are at the questions section. I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for the moment so I can see people, and then go to the chat box. So Rachel Martin, I see a question from you in the chat. How long does membership in the teaching artist roster remain active? Right now, the ways that people typically deactivate their membership is if they move out of state or they just stop doing the work. So right now, there's currently not a reapplication process. But right now, if someone moves out of state, typically they're deactivated on the MSAC roster. Or if they let me know, I'm just not doing this work anymore, then I remove them as well. Alan.
Hi, Lizzie. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. First, I have Lizzie is very good at helping you out. I can tell you that directly, and delightful to work with. So take advantage of it, and I think you'll gain much. I have a question about the showcases. I really liked what you did this past year to have the 2 showcases. I was participating in one of them. Part of the showcase, I'm wondering, can you open it up so that it gives us opportunities to meet with each other and talk to each other? When I went to Art Summit, which I suggest everybody to go to next year if you haven't gone to one yet, was a great opportunity to meet people, especially other teaching artists. And it just means being available and sharing your ideas publicly. And then people come up to you during lunch and then they talk about what they're doing. And I met 2 very good friends out of it this year. Is there a possibility that you can link the showcase to an opportunity of having like we talked about, a round robin with my program doing with the seniors, so that people feel comfortable meeting each other, talking to each other, finding what everybody's doing, seeing each other's websites, and it makes for a very nice collaborative effort. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, we definitely look into it. We really appreciate your feedback. Just for the context for everyone else in the room, the Teaching Artist Showcase, our first time of doing it was this past April and May, and we highlighted on each date, we highlighted about 12 or 13 different teaching artists. Each artist had about 4 minutes to present. So it was very quick, and we invited organizations and schools, and we shared the information and event among all of our networks that we could. And we had a pretty decent turnout in the audience section. And yeah, it was really wonderful to see teaching artists connecting to each other during that. And, you know, we definitely want to look into more opportunities to help teaching artists network with each other and get to know each other, especially post-pandemic, where I think a lot of us kind of fell out of touch and we want to connect again.
Thank you.
Eliza.
Thank you. Thank you for having this session. We're a teaching artist organization, and one of our main partners is Excel Beyond the Bell, which is the after-school program run by the Recreation Department of Montgomery County. So we would typically not bring the program into the school by working with the school. We would bring the program into the school by working with EBB. Am I right that we should try to get Excel Beyond the Bell to sign the form, the grant, the part of the grant where the partner signs, or do you still want us to work with the school directly?
So the application does allow for multiple sites to be listed on the application. However, you'll want to pick one site as sort of the primary contact, which in this case, I would recommend Excel Beyond the Bell. And then you would also want to list the school in the application as well. So when you're going through the application, especially in the collaborating school and organization section, it will ask how many sites or collaborating schools and organizations are participating in the grant. And if you're working with Excel Beyond the Bell and a school, you would put 2. And then one of those, and it sounds like Excel Beyond the Bell is who you're collaborating primarily with, and that's who you would want to assign a coordinator with for the application. But then that also lets us know what school you're also working in as well.
Okay. And just a quick follow-up. Thank you for answering that. We, as I noted, are the teaching artist organization and are on your roster as such. Our individual teaching artists in Maryland are sort of in the process. We're going to try to get them on the roster, but they're not there yet. So I just want to confirm that we are still eligible for AEI grants as an organization on the roster.
Yeah, and this is part of a transition from one application process to another that we experienced last year. So yeah, we can definitely talk more about that, Eliza, but you're all set. We're in the process of, we had a whole new teaching artist roster application process, that an application form that started last year, and you had applied, I think, in the previous year. So we're trying to bridge sort of that connection, or those different years of how teaching artists applied and joined the roster.
Okay, well, we'll get the ball rolling to get them all on the roster, because I think they're all very qualified. But thank you for answering that question.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Lynn.
Hi. Okay, my camera isn't working. I had a question about, you said that organizations or schools can only apply twice, right? Or be granted two. Could they use those two applications on your organization if they decided to, say, apply for you in August and then again in January, or can they only apply with that teaching artist once?
So a school or site can participate into two arts and education grant applications per our fiscal year. Sometimes that looks like one school doing like a fall residency with one teaching artist and then a spring residency with another teaching artist. Sometimes it also looks like a school doing a fall program with one artist and bringing them back a second time for the spring. So it can depend. There's flexibility there. And if you ever have any sort of specific questions, feel free to reach out. Or if you're not sure if a site has been awarded their maximum amount of grants or participate in their maximum amount of grants, you can always ask me and I can look up to see if they're eligible.
Thank you. And a really quick follow-up. So they are allowed 2 grants per year, but if they get turned down, can they reapply with that same teaching artist more than twice? Is it 2 that they're awarded or 2 times that they apply?
2 times they're awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly turn to the chat. Quinn Johnson, since my dance ensemble is both on the MSAC roster and the Arts for Learning roster, we want to apply for arts and education grants on our own to support a project. How will funding affect the overall cap on funds received to the ensemble? So again, the cap is based on lead artist. So that's what we're looking at. Whether you apply on your own is fine. And if you apply through Arts for Learning, that is fine. But what I'm looking at is the lead artist cap. So you're going to be capped when you reach that maximum amount. Hopefully that was clear. Tulumidi, please, what program you mentioned to participate in? I'm not sure if you could clarify your comment, that'll be helpful. I'm not totally clear. So let me come back to you on that. Joanne, oh, sorry, Quinn, you had a follow-up question. Can you share the lead artist cap amount? So yes, that was earlier in the presentation, maybe before you joined, but the lead artist maximum amount for FY 2025 right now is $30,000. We're almost at time. Quickly, Joanne, what is your question? Let me see if I can get to you. Oh, you are muted if you're
trying to unmute there.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because you said that at an independent artist, the maximum that they could be paid out of the budget was 4%. So that means the total budget has to be at least $10,000 before I could make $400. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. Can you repeat your understanding?
Okay. There was a 4% cap on the amount for independent artists to be paid out of the total budget.
Oh, well, okay. So I'll just explain the cap amounts again. And we're at time, but I can quickly just share the slide in case that's helpful. Let me first go back to it. Give me 1 second. Actually, since we're at time, I don't mind staying on a little bit, but let me just say goodbye to everyone. If Joanne and Tulu, if you want to just stay on, I'm happy to just answer your questions or anybody else who is on. I just want to say thank you for everyone to join us today. Again, this is being recorded and I'll be sharing the slides out with everyone following this presentation probably later this week. So thanks again for attending. And if anyone has additional questions, we can definitely hang on. So thanks so much. Let me go ahead and turn off this recording.